Good morning, everyone. How are you doing? My name is Catherine, and I'd like to say that Christmas is almost upon us, which means that we have a lot of things to do. A lot of our students are sitting for exams in the next couple of weeks, specifically the B2 and C2 level of the Michigan Proficiency examinations. Today, we're going to look into the heated topic of writing for C2 ECPE level of the Michigan Proficiency. So allow me to share my screen and we are going to start. Okay, so here we go. Okay. Now, before continuing with this presentation, I'd like to say that I owe a huge debt of gratitude to my students. I actually have two classes that are sitting for the Michigan C2 ECP exams for this December, and they were very kind to actually contribute to this webinar. They prepared a few articles and proposals for me to correct, and we will be using them in this presentation to see how, an article and proposal should be written and how it should be evaluated as well. Now, before continuing, I would like to say that the contents of this presentation include the new revised format of the Michigan writing examination, why it changed, the scoring criteria, which is going to help you understand how to better, mark your own students, infographics, which is a welcome addition to the new writing format, and we'll get into that a bit later, how to compile a proposal, which is a new topic, and the second new addition is how to write an article. Now, we will finish off with some strategies and advice on how to, better finish this writing task. Now, the new revised format. Well, for those of you who aren't aware yet, we used to have two essays, and the student was supposed to choose one of the two topics. And the problem was that they didn't give any ideas. The other issue was that there was a very limited time constraint of 30 minutes, which was very problematic for a lot of students. Now, in the revised section, there is a selection of a proposal or an article, and the second topic is an essay. So they have, a wider range of selection, concerning, topics that they could use. Now, they are also given clues and ideas in the form of infographics, and at least one of them should be used. And of course, I think something that all the kids, were really, enjoying, and it was a huge sigh of relief, is the fact that they are given 45 minutes instead of 30. So the format is way more friendlier, and it also helps, students who have a weaker command of grammar and vocabulary. Okay, so thanks to the new format, you can express yourself with a wider range of topics because instead of, limiting them to essays, they have articles, proposals, and, this opens, the potential to a huge world of ideas for the students. Now, it also reflects the trends of our society, both personally and professionally. And of course, because this is the whole purpose of, sitting for a test, it offers us the ability to put our skills to the test and not be limited, okay? Now, there is the inclusion of writing techniques that were previously excluded because there's a huge difference in writing a proposal, a huge difference in writing an article and an essay. And now, thanks to the fact that, the university has included these techniques, there is a wider variety, a wider range of variety, okay, that the students can actually, implement when they are trying to express themselves. Okay, now, as for the criteria, well, actually the previous way that the examiners, used to score kids was kind of limited because, as you can see in this small table, the previous format used to score things like rhetoric, speech, grammar, syntax, and vocabulary. But writing an essay or a proposal or any kind of writing format for that matter does not have to do only with grammar and syntax, okay, or vocabulary. And this is something that was kind of unfair for many students. And as you can see here, the scoring for each criteria was 1 to 5 points for each of them. And this was very, very, frustrating for some students who had a huge range of ideas, but were not that good at grammar or vocabulary. Now, with a new revised section, I'm proud to say that there are, there's much more potential for the kids to express themselves, even if they're not good at, 1 or 2 sections. Now, In the previous format, what is rhetoric? Well, the art of effective or persuasive writing, especially the exploitation of figures of speech and other compositional techniques. Okay, well, yeah, that is actually one way of putting it, but that's not, the only thing that has to do with writing. Writing, incorporates a huge range of techniques, ways of expressing oneself, and this, whole concept of rhetoric was very limited. Okay, and it left much, to the mind's interpretation. Now, in the new format, they have incorporated a very important element, which is task completion, because if a student, actually expressed their opinion, answered all the questions that the task, proposed to them, I mean, they actually completed the task, and they should, be awarded for this. It's not only about grammar and syntax. Development, okay, of course, including organization. A student must be rewarded, okay, in the case that the student actually has a proper development of his written format and actually organizes his ideas properly. Now, as for the language, yes, of course, we will still grade this, but it's not only about grammar and vocabulary. And finally, authorial voice, how original and engaging the writing is. Okay. Now, as for the different weight per criterion, well, there has been, systematic evaluation of the writing task, and the experts in this field have come to a conclusion that there is a specific, value for each criteria. So for task completion, we have 1 to 5, 1 to 5 for development, 1 to 7 for language. Yes, grammar and vocabulary have a few extra points, but there's a whole range that we're going to look into as this presentation moves forward, because it's grammar, vocabulary, syntax, and so many phenomena that we'll be discussing soon. And of course, authorial voice, which is 1 to 3. Okay, now there's a total maximum of 20 points. And if you want to switch this into a percentage, you just multiply by 5. Okay, we'll see a few examples later on. Now, let's look at what each of them means. When we're talking about task completion, I briefly touched upon this. They score you 1 to 5 points. First of all, topic relevance. I mean, are you on or off topic? Multiple viewpoints. Okay, have you expressed your opinion in a multitude of ways? All right. Has the candidate expressed his or her own opinion concerning the matter? Has the candidate incorporated the source, the infographics, which we will discuss in detail soon? Development. Now, as for development, meticulous analysis of claims. Yes, because when you're writing an essay, you have to be meticulous and analysis, each perspective. What about the organization of the essay? Is it split into proper paragraphs? Is there an introduction, a conclusion, a main body? How is the main body split? Into how many paragraphs? So we are also talking about the structure and how this is, implemented in, the writing task. Of course, everything has to be tied perfectly together. And we are also talking about the cohesion and the flow, how the ideas are interpreted and how they are analyzed and how we reach a conclusion. There has to be a specific flow. Now, as for the language, in the previous format, yes, there was huge, emphasis on language, especially grammar and vocabulary, but it's not only about that now. Okay, so yes, there is grammatical efficiency, vocabulary range and usage, all right. But the way we use vocabulary to reason, to express ideas, argue a point, or even provide directions. Does the student use rhetorical questions? So when someone reads the essay or the article, the proposal, do we make the reader actually think for himself? And of course, a variety of grammatical structures are encouraged. When we're talking about grammatical structures, inversions, cleft sentences, conditionals, passive voice, to name a few. Okay. Now, as for formulaic writing, yeah, this is kind of a debatable issue. There are a lot of people that are not in favor of formulaic writing. However, either we like it or not, some elements of formulaic writing are to be used in any kind of writing format. For example, when we're writing a formal letter, a formal email, I mean, it's Common courtesy. At the end, you usually say, I look forward to hearing from you. All right. Or, some other expressions that have to do with, in my personal opinion. There are some expressions that can't be avoided. The secret is to keep a balance, okay, to strike a balance between, the use of all of these expressions. Try not to overdo it, implement a few that are useful, okay, and have, a balance, within the essay. We'll talk about this soon. Now, what is formulaic writing? It's essentially a shortcut that allows writers to generate interest without the hard work of writing engaging, informative, and valuable content. The answer is to focus on the content and show your audience that you have something of value to offer. Okay. Now, this was from the source from Xeris.com. Now, what are the advantages of formulaic writing? Well, formulas provide scaffolds. I mean, it's something that we cannot deny. All right. It helps us reduce the cognitive load. Okay. So when you have a few formulaic expressions, it actually helps us focus on other elements of the writing task. Okay. And of course, it also boosts our self-esteem, because if you already have a few expressions in head and you're trying to implement them in the essay, you can then focus on analyzing your ideas more. All right. So formulaic writing can be used in such a way that will facilitate and alleviate, all the stress that the student has. Now, what are the disadvantages? Yes, strong writers may be frustrated because there are some cases in which we don't want to use formulaic writings. We want to express ourselves. However, there is a specific way of expressing ourselves in a few, in a few cases. For example, when you are, expressing yourself in an essay and you want to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of an issue. In many cases in the introduction, you will probably say something like, in the following essay, we will discuss the advantages and disadvantages of this issue. Or you might use a rhetoric question, but one must think, what are the concerns or, the advantages of, this proposal? Some expressions are formulaic, okay, and they will help you, reduce the time that you have to devote to writing the essay and not, exceed the time limit. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, it helps us, alleviate all this burden of thinking of all the ideas that you have to implement in the essay. Now, it does confine students' autonomy, okay, because some kids really want to express themselves. They don't want to use formulaic expressions. However, in many cases, they are, exceeding the time limit, and that's a problem. And so they unfortunately have to resort to formulaic expressions in order to try to live up to the standards of, the test. Now, it also limits understanding of what writing is, because there are some students who use formulaic expressions without even realizing what they're writing. So even in, oral speech, I mean, you have a student who might learn something by heart, like, it's nice to make your acquaintance. And, if you ask the student what that means, I mean, they probably don't know. However, the student did, express, himself or herself when meeting someone, even if the student doesn't 100% know what that means. So the problem is that there's already so much repetitive and duplicable content out there. And the whole thing is that we do want our students to express themselves. We really want original ideas, but when writing a test, it is a good idea to use some of these expressions in order to achieve your goals. Now, the whole idea is to strike a balance, as I said. All right, get more specific by using statistics, case studies, interviews, and testimonials. All right, when you're using things like this, you can, actually use something that has been implemented by someone else, but presenting it in such a way that is not so common, okay? All right, and don't just offer general advice. I mean, it's very poor, in the command of the language, and of course, you don't express your ideas to the fullest of their potential. Because we always want to offer a fresh perspective. All right. Now, as for the language, formulaic expressions must fit the context of their response. Okay, because a lot of students use formulaic expressions in such a way that they themselves don't even realize what they're writing. And there's not this cohesion, this flow. And, the ideas don't actually connect with each other. when you are actually, using the same formulaic expressions over and over again, because not everything fits in each essay. Each topic is different, and, there are a lot of things that can't be included, because I've seen students who make a list of expressions, maybe 20, 30 expressions, and they're trying to use them in every essay. And I keep telling them, guys, you can't use all these expressions in the same essay. Some might match, some might not. So you just have to figure it out for yourself and try to be, more practical, to say the least. Now, there are often too many, rendering them inappropriate to the contents, as I just said. And of course, this will have a negative impact on their rating. Now, as for authorial voice, what is this? Because a lot of teachers keep asking me, Catherine, what is authorial voice? Well, it has to do with originality. We want our students to have original ideas. Personal examples, okay, trying to think outside the box. Now, reader engagement, is the writing that engaging, okay, that will make the reader actually think for himself? Okay, will our written assignment trouble the reader and, get a response from him, either positive or negative? That is engagement. So in many cases, you can implement rhetorical questions, to say the least. A heightened sense of awareness of the audience, because when you're writing an article, for example, or a proposal, you have to know who you're writing it to. If, for example, you're writing a proposal, okay, it's usually to the director or a principal. All right, it's someone with authority. On the other hand, an article can be read in a magazine, even by teenagers. So you have to adapt your writing to the specific audience that you are, focusing on. And of course, there's not only one specific approach. Depending on the topic, depending on the format, there are so many different ways of approaching, a specific topic. Now, as for the C2 CEFR descriptor, Common European Framework, okay, which sets the standards for the level of each English language test, can write engaging descriptions of experience in a style appropriate to the genre adopted. All right. And of course, creativity, freedom, experimentation, these are elements that are inspired. Okay, we want them. We want to promote these elements in the writing format. Now, again, I have to stress this: overuse of formulaic expressions will have a negative impact on authorial voice as well. All right, so they have to be very careful of this. Use some formulaic expressions, don't overdo it, because your mark in the authorial voice will diminish. And of course, they mustn't be too general or lack originality. That's the whole idea. Try to be original. And I'm not saying that all students can accomplish this. There are some students that are really good at grammar or vocabulary. There are others that, are not that great at, providing original ideas. However, the new marking criterion, okay, the way that, we evaluate the writing formats now is much more fair, to say the least, because now you can actually have some students, show their true potential, because maybe you might not be good in one field, but another you might be great. And now you have the capacity to show this and, get a better mark at it. Okay, now, as for infographics, what are infographics? This is from a sample from the ECPE official sample of 2021 from the University of Michigan. Infographics are used as, clues, ideas, information that the student can use, okay, to fulfill and, finalize the writing task that he is handed. Now, let's look at the infographic, the whole concept of infographics. Now, sources of information which are provided as prompts to assist test takers in building an argument in response to the task question. An infographic may be a figure, a chart, a quotation, or a graph. So we have, a variety of types of, infographics here that we can, implement in the writing task. Now, they include a source indicating where the information was taken from. And for exam purposes, at least one infographic should be integrated. Okay, they have to use one of them. Now, in many cases, students use 2 or 3, which is great because you add more ideas. Now, what do we mean by, the descriptor of the C2 CFR? It can set out multiple perspectives on complex academic or professional topics, clearly distinguishing his or her own ideas and opinions from those in the sources. Okay, so now you have like these infographics, which offer you a huge range of ideas concerning professional topics with ideas and opinions. All right, so the Michigan writing task has become way more accessible, all right, friendlier, and will alleviate a lot of the stress that the students previously had. How to use the source material. Okay, this is a question that ponders, a lot of educators and students alike. Now, the whole idea is to support and strengthen your own ideas. That's why they're giving you the infographics. It's not a burden, okay? Now, one or more sources should be used. They should be integrated, not included. What do we mean by this? You just can't copy, the infographics that you see. It's not a copy-paste procedure like we do on computers. You have to paraphrase them. You have to extend, you have to try to elaborate on the ideas given in the infographics. And we will discuss many examples on how to do this. Okay, so we paraphrase them, or you can cite them directly. However, you have to clarify that the info is provided by the source, not the writer. Okay, let's look at a few examples. So this is a figure. A figure offers information in a summarized form. Numbers or percentages are usually stressed first. In this case, we see 6,500 per year jobs in London eliminated due to technology. This was, provided by a recent news report. Okay, so a quotation. Quotation, as you can see here, we even have the speech bubble. Okay, as the title indicates, a quotation offers information shared by an individual. In this case, this is something spoken by Helen Greyer, online business owner. The name and title are shared in the source that follows. A graph. Okay, we will analyze each and every one of them. Graphs can be complicated. However, the ones used in the ECPE exams are straightforward. It's simple. You don't have like 1,000 numbers here. And even if there are more numbers, it's not complicated, okay? The administrators of the examination have made sure that they are not that complex, okay? You don't have to be a math whiz in order to interpret them, okay? It's straightforward. You have like, a very brief description of what the graph is about, all right? With a few numbers, providing, statistics that have to do with increase or, decreasing of a product or a value or anything like that. So the values are easy to interpret and represent an increasing or decreasing trend. Now, as for the chart or a pie chart in this case, pie charts incorporate percentages followed by a brief explanation of what each portion represents. Now, another kind of chart, a bar chart, same, way of thinking here. All right, they reflect productivity trends or levels. And they are followed or preceded by brief explanations. So as you can see, each and every one of the infographics are very easy to interpret. They can be analyzed and used as ideas in the essay, the article, the proposal, in such a way that we can actually increase the length of, our writing task, incorporate ideas, elaborate on them, and of course, reach a conclusion based on the infographics. This is actually a lifesaver for kids. And based on, the students that I've worked with, their feedback is incredible. They say that, these infographics have really helped us. Okay, now, so how do we work on an infographic? Well, all it takes is 3 steps. Step 1. Let's look at this infographic. 3,000 students per year leave country to study abroad, a recent news report. Okay, so you interpret the information and analyze the source. Easy. Now, step 2, paraphrase the information. Try to use synonyms for key words. Change the form of a keyword. For example, you can change a noun to a verb or vice versa. Rendering the information in a sentence. Try to switch from active to passive voice. Now, step 3. Introducing the source. You have to actually, refer to who gave you the information. In this case, we have a recent news report. Now, let's try it all out together. Step 1, 3,000 students per year leave the country to study abroad. Okay. Step 2, we're going to paraphrase this a bit. 3,000 students travel abroad for educational purposes on a yearly basis. Much better. Okay, we're paraphrasing, using synonyms, changing verbs to nouns or nouns to verbs, implementing active or passive voice, And step 3, you have to refer to who gave you the information. According to a recent news report, see? 3,000 students travel abroad for educational purposes on a yearly basis. And this is how you analyze the infographic. Easy. Now, you can play with the words a lot. You can describe quantity or numbers. Okay, there are so many expressions. And yes, you might think this is formulaic. It's not. You're analyzing an infographic. Approximately, almost, just under, a third of, half of. You don't have to say 50%. You don't have to say 49%. You can say almost half. Okay, so playing with the words, fractions, a large number of, a great number of, a small number of, proportion, percentage. All right, there are so many words that you can use. The majority of, most people. Now, trends, when you have an infographic analyzing trends, it is estimated that sales, profits, expenses will increase or decrease by 40% next, 50%, 60% by the next time period. You can pause this video and, you can, take notes of these and share these with your students. It would be a huge honor. You're welcome to do so. Now, sales are predicted, expected, estimated to rise or fall. There has been a gradual, sudden, dramatic increase or decrease in sales over the past time period. Okay, feel free to pause, the video. And of course, you can, use these in class and, share them with your students. All right. These are wonderful expressions that they can use when working on the infographics. Now, when we're talking about the source, according to a university study, according to a news report, conducted where? In the region, in the US, wherever. And of course, I don't want to tire you by reading everything and giving you a headache. There are so many expressions that you are free to copy. Okay, you can just freeze the screen, take a screenshot, take notes. These are wonderful expressions that you can use, share them with your students. Okay. Now, before moving on, I'd like to say that it's a good idea to have a variety of expressions and have your students learn many, different ways of expressing oneself. Now, why am I saying this? Many students might want to use 2 infographics or 3. Try to have, variety of vocabulary to express each one of them. Try not to present the infographics in the same fashion as you would do, the first one, okay? It will show, the examiner that you have a wider range of vocabulary and know how to use the language better. Now, as for the new revised format, how many words are we supposed to write? My students always ask me, how many words, Miss Catherine? And I'm like, listen, guys, don't count the words. Focus on the development rather than the word count. So what do we mean by this? We need 2 or 3 ideas with supporting details. So the standard structure is the introduction, 2 to 3 paragraphs in the main body, and a conclusion. If you follow this recipe, you don't have to count words. Okay, we want quality, not quantity. As for the age of test takers, well, I'm happy to say that the test has been adapted to a younger audience, okay, because the topics are adjusted to that of the test takers. There was this trend, okay, decades ago, that proficiency level, the C2, was, mostly intended to, for adults or university students. We have, witnessed a huge trend, okay, of students who are sitting for the exams and are at, way younger levels than expected. I've actually examined as an oral examiner, students who have been sitting for the C2 level who are about the age of like 13 or 14, which is incredible. Okay, now let's move on. What are the new tasks that we added? Well, I mentioned them at the beginning. Let me repeat myself. First of all, we have the first scenario, an essay or a proposal. The second scenario is an essay or an article. So there's always an essay, and students have been working on essays for all these years. Article and proposal are two new elements that have been included in, the examination. So for the purposes of this webinar, we will focus on the proposal and the article. And we will also be using examples and some written assignments provided by my students. Okay, so before engaging the task, make certain the task is clearly understood. A lot of students are usually off topic, and I tell them, be careful. Read the task once, not once, at least 2 or 3 times. So evaluate the potential for sharing personal experience or knowledge of the task. Okay, so before starting to write the article, the proposal, or the essay, think to yourself, what can I share on a personal level, okay, with the examiner, the person who's going to read this essay? And of course, correctly decipher the source material. Do I understand the infographics? Do I understand the task? How many questions are in the task? There are some tasks that incorporate 2 questions or even 3. You have to answer all the questions. And I know this sounds, silly, but when you're frustrated or when you're stressed, when you're sitting for exam, it's very easy to miss out on one of the questions. So you set a clear outline of the writing structure before commencing. Number of paragraphs. How many paragraphs am I going to use? Content. What am I going to write in each paragraph? Infographics. How many am I going to use? And of course, you have to adhere to one's opinion. Avoid contradicting thoughts. There are some students who start off in favor of one issue, and then as the essay moves on, they sort of change their minds, or it's kind of vague what they are in favor of. So they don't clearly state their opinion, and they lose marks on this. And of course, as we can see on the bottom right of the screen, think before you write. It does a lot of damage control. Okay, so the funny thing is that a lot of students say the proposal, and many a time they actually refer to Ryan Reynolds and Sandra Bullock, the movie. No, it's not this kind of proposal. Actually, the movie is really great. Now, the proposal. What is a proposal? It's written for a specific person of authority, a company president, the mayor, a school principal. Okay, so you get the whole idea that this is a formal way of writing. You have to state the purpose of writing in the introduction when you're examining a decision, a plan, or a suggestion. It's very important to do this in the beginning. The proposal presents opposing views of a decision plan in the main body. Okay, so you usually have 2 parties who are in favor of separate ideas. You have to present both the opposing views, okay, in the decision plan of the main body. You most certainly have to use formal language in the proposal. And of course, the writer's recommendation in the conclusion, okay, because you have to state if you're in favor of one side or the other. Now, a lot of students ask me, Ms. Catherine, do we have to incorporate headings? No, you don't have to. Now, some of you might be asking headings, titles. Yes, you can use a title before each paragraph of the proposal. It's not mandatory, but it does help with the organization. So what is the basic model outline? Addressing the recipient. Who are you writing to? To the president, to the mayor, to the school principal, for example. I mentioned just now that, you don't have to use headings, but they do help with the organizational flow. Introduction. In the introduction, you state the purpose of writing. Main body. Paragraph 1, you present one view of the decision or the plan. Paragraph 2, present the opposing view of the decision or plan. And of course, you have the conclusion in which you make your recommendations. Now, what about the headings? Yes, there are different kinds of headings that you can use. The most common example is 2, introduction, positive response, negative response, and recommendation. These are the most common headings that are used, in the proposal. Are they the only ones? Of course not. There's so much variety when writing a proposal. Another formula could be, to introduction, causes and effects, for example. If you're talking about, the environment and how to save it, recommendations, and of course, conclusion again. Okay, so it's what we said earlier, originality. We don't want to limit, our students. We want them, to be able to express themselves and, show us what they are capable of. Okay, now we will be working on some official writing prompts from the University of Michigan. And this is an example. This is the ECPE sample prompt 3. Now let's zoom into it a bit so we can see it a little bit better. As you can see here, we have 3 infographics of various forms, and we will start working on the proposal. Allow me to read the task that is assigned to the students. A local company wants to allow its employees to make decisions about their working hours and create their own schedules for coming into the office. Some people at the company think that this is not a good idea. Write a proposal to the president of the company, evaluating the different options and explain what you think should be done. Include at least one piece of information given above to support your response. Okay, it says at least, and in many cases, students, will incorporate 2 or 3. All right. Now, I'm very proud to say that my students, as I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, they helped out. They were assigned, these writing tasks, and they were so eager to help me out. I wish I could implement all of their writing tasks because I have, I'm very lucky to say that I have 7 classes this year, and 2 of them are sitting for exams this December. And this class is 7 wonderful, students that contributed to this webinar. However, due to time constraints, I am actually going to use 2 writing assignments provided by my students. This one is from Amalia, and allow me to start reading it. Now, I could have typed this, but I wanted you to see, how students, actually write in its original form. Okay, so let's start by reading what Amalia has written. Introduction. Okay, she has used headings. This will help with the organization of, the writing task. The aim of this proposal is to examine the plan of allowing employees to make decisions about their working hours and make recommendations for the best way to proceed. Now, you might see a bit of formulaic writing in here. However, the introduction is flawless. She's to the point. She has expressed what her purpose is in this proposal. Okay, and also stated the issue. All right, it's a perfect introduction. Well done. Now, if we move on, we're taking a look at the main body. Okay, this is the first paragraph of the main body. As you can see, I've highlighted a few instances here. I'll explain what they are. I've made a few corrections. I know that it's kind of difficult to watch on your screen, but please bear with me. I'll be reading it as well. At first glance, the idea is a welcome one, particularly to the workforce. I'll be reading my corrections as well. Not only will the creation of a personal schedule benefit the employees, but it will also promote a constructive impact on the company. Okay, so she has explained a benefit, all right, that it will, help the workforce. And what has she done now? She has also included one infographic, which is highlighted in yellow. A recent study reveals that having more time off increases employee productivity. Okay, she used the source, she explained what the infographic is about, and she paraphrased it. Now, she not only stated the infographic, but as we will continue reading, you will see that she will express her opinion on this and reach a conclusion, okay, on what this infographic, actually presents. Consequently, there will be a boost in the enterprise's workforce due to worker efficiency. Moreover, the potential improved treatment would make a significant change. Now, at this point, as you can see on the left part of the screen, I've actually written how. She doesn't explain how there's going to be a significant change. Despite that, though, she has elaborated, to a great degree on the infographic. Now, there's another infographic that she included. A business manager and author asserts that employees are the greatest asset that a company has and should be dealt accordingly. Okay, treated accordingly. Okay, now she analyzed, the positive responses. Now let's look at the negative ones. And she has done something wonderful here. Allow me to explain. Nevertheless, not everyone has embraced the move. What did we mention earlier? That we have to analyze both views, okay, the opposing views. Many are concerned about the negative consequences of such action on the company. For instance, a lapse in effective communication can sometimes cause confusion and difficulty in the coordination of meetings. This novel idea is bound to generate some issues regarding the productiveness of employees. More specifically, negligence and insolence could lead to catastrophic results. Now, what has she done here? She has used an example, okay? A lapse in effective communication can sometimes cause confusion. She has analyzed repercussions, which means difficulty in the coordination of meetings, okay? And the outcome, it's bound to generate some issues regarding the productiveness of employees. Okay, so she has elaborated to a full extent in the negative response of this writing task. Now, as for the conclusion, what do we want here? In the conclusion, we want to state our own opinion. What has this student done? Taking everything under consideration, both parties make some valid points. However, I am inclined to believe that the benefits of the decision far outweigh the drawbacks. So in this one, Amalia has stated her opinion. If the employees act responsibly and contribute to the company, then more people will undoubtedly support the plan. We can actually split this conclusion into three segments. Recognition, she understands what's going on, and the whole, idea of this writing task. She states her opinion, and of course, in the form of a conditional concerning grammar, she offers advice if the employees act responsibly and contribute. Okay. Now, it would be ideal if we had more time, so I would analyze each word, every grammar instance, all the vocabulary. However, you did get a clear, idea of what she has written. If we were to correct this in a very, brief manner, let me remind you that task completion is 1 to 5, 1 to 5 for development, language, 1 to 7, and authorial voice, 1 to 3. Now, the total maximum points is 20. What did she get? For task completion, she did get a 5. Why is this so? Because she used the infographics as the task asked us to do. She stated her opinion. She also presented the problem. And she also described opposing viewpoints. Okay, she fully completed the task. As for development, she gets a 4 out of 5. Why is this? Well, she did develop her ideas. She did use examples. In some cases, some of the things that she wrote in the main body, in the second paragraph, she didn't fully analyze, didn't expand her proposal, that idea. However, the structure of the proposal was ideal. It was split into paragraphs, okay? And her organizational skills were remarkable. So not perfect, but almost there. Well done. As for the language, she gets a 5 out of 7. She did use sufficient vocabulary. It could have been better, but she did use proficiency vocabulary in some instances. And she also used some grammar control, such as conditionals. And of course, as for the authorial voice, she gets a 2 out of 3. Did she convince me? How were her arguments? They were really good. They weren't perfect, but they were really good. So she was almost, a perfect score out of authorial voice. Now, if you add the numbers, 5 plus 4 plus 5 plus 2, you get 16 out of 20. If you multiply this with 5, you get, and I hope my math is correct, yes, it's 80%. Okay, so this is a well-written proposal that gets 80%. Now, yes, we can debate about this, okay, because marking a student in many cases is highly subjective. Yes, there is a guideline and we try to make it as objective as possible, but there will always be, a few, how can I say this? There will be some kind of debate in many cases, okay? We are human beings. The way that we perceive some things differs from person to person. However, the examiners of Michigan follow a guideline to the extent possible. Okay. Now, let's move on to the article. It's written with the purpose of being published in a newspaper, a blog, a magazine, etc. It briefly describes a decision or plan in the introduction while also presenting the opposing views, kind of similar to the proposal in a few ways. Presents opposing views of a decision plan in the main body, and we use formal language. The writer's recommendation or opinion in the conclusion must be added, and it incorporates a brief title expressing the main idea, which is optional. Okay, we need one title, which is not mandatory. Now, what about the basic model outline? Well, as I said, an optional title. The title must express the main idea of the article. In the introduction, we have to briefly describe the decision or the plan, briefly refer to the opposing views, and then we move on to the main body. In the main body, paragraph 1, you present one view of the decision plan. Paragraph 2, you present the opposing view of the decision plan. And in the conclusion, you express your opinion and or make recommendations. Now, this is another official sample from the University of Michigan. It's the ECPE sample prompt 1, which incorporates an article, and we will zoom into this so we can look into this a bit better. Now, in this article, we will read the task so we can see what is asked of the student. Teachers in your school plan to use a popular social media platform for class activities. Some teachers and students are excited about this idea, but others are not. Write an article for the school newspaper on the effects of forcing teachers and students to use social media for classwork and your opinion about it. Include at least one piece of information given above to support your response. Now, as you can see here, as always, we have 3 infographics. And you can see that we have a few interesting, cases. For example, we have a bar chart, we have a pie graph, we have a quotation. You can use 1 of 3, 2 of 3, 3 of 3. For example, 66% can be interpreted as 2/3. Okay, we can start working on that vocabulary. Now, without tiring you, let's move on and see my next student. This is an essay from a remarkable student. Her name is Martina. And she wrote this article. I'm not saying it's perfect. It has some flaws. We'll look at it soon. Now, she starts off by saying, the school has put itself in a hectic situation. Hectic. All right, it's not that perfect word. She could say precarious or any other kind of word. An argument has arisen regarding the prospect of utilizing a social media platform to do classwork. A variety of thoughts on the matter have been expressed, yet no final decision has been made. As we can see, she's using passive voice here, and she's using, quite advanced vocabulary. Today, I'm presenting and analyzing the plan's pros and cons and see how it will or not benefit our school. Okay, so she has presented the issue in the article's introduction. Quite well, I can say. All right, so the reader is fully aware of what we will be discussing. Now, as for the main body, to begin with, most, if not the entire student population of our school has an account on various well-known media platforms. Teachers alike have modernized quite a bit. Okay, it's like we're saying we're old-fashioned, but anyway, we can say follow suit and can adapt to the new system as well. Of course we can. Using a social media platform will be convenient for doing group work. We can use something better here, conducting group work. Since students and educators are able to call, text, or send voice messages to discuss and share information. Communication is faster and easier. Okay, so now the student is actually adding information, her opinion, and what are the benefits of this, okay? All right, share information and presenting your findings to your class and teacher. Furthermore, working on activities through a computer or smartphone with programs like Word, PowerPoint, etc., will give them better quality. Okay, that's a mistake here. She's probably saying will enhance their quality. I'm not really sure what she's saying here. And also help us improve our ICT knowledge and abilities. Now, as for the other opposing viewpoint, on the other hand, it might not be an ideal plan that applies to all. A considerable amount of people, number of people, are unable to express their honest opinion online, afraid of judgment and overcome by anxiety. Moreover, now you can see here in some places, the student uses furthermore, moreover. These are formulaic expressions. However, they are linking words and they actually, help the student relieve the stress during the exam test by adding the connectors and, focusing more on the ideas that, the student wants to express. Moreover, students and teachers' privacy can be easily invaded in social media. For example, leaked message conversations on the group chat or private one. In addition, another linking word. The time invested on classwork online will just add to the already long amount of time we spend in front of a screen on a daily basis. Okay, so as we can see, she presented her arguments quite well, but there's something missing. Did anyone see any infographic anywhere? Did she take any, infographic and put it to good use? No, she didn't. And, under the pressure, the stress of writing the test, she missed it. However, this will be detrimental on her overall mark because she didn't, include it. It would have actually helped her. In conclusion, taking into account the dangers and downsides of this method, I believe that it is for the best to keep it as a backup plan for more demanding projects or in an emergency case, and continue doing class activities in person. What do our fellow classmates have to say about this? Feel free to share. Now, what has she done in the conclusion? She has shared her opinion, okay? She's in favor of one, side, and she also used a rhetoric question, making it a bit more personal, okay, and more accessible to the reader. Now, if you're wondering what kind of mark this student would receive, well, it's the same, criteria as before with the article. Now, the task completion, unfortunately, she didn't include an infographic, which means that her mark, dropped a bit here. So she got a 3 out of 5. As for development, it was almost perfect. She presented both sides. She stated her opinion, expressed, the opposing views, used a few examples. Her structure was great. It wasn't perfect, but it was great. As for the language, there were some instances in which, she could have used a richer vocabulary and not at a B2 level. She could have used something more advanced like a C1 or C2. However, she did use some forms of grammar expression in the writing. I wish I had more time to elaborate on each single word and sentence, but unfortunately we're running out of time. As for the authorial voice, she was quite convincing, not 100%, but she was convincing. And she got, if you add the numbers, a total of 13 out of 20. If you multiply this with 5, you get 65%. Now, both the article that we worked on previously and the proposal and the article, both of them get a passing mark because the base mark for Michigan is 65%. So both of them pass. Maybe I was a bit too strict on this article, but it doesn't matter. Okay, practice makes perfect, and we're setting our standards really high. Okay, now we don't have much time left, so I would like to focus on a few more elements. Time restrictions and strategies. This is probably the greatest concern that students have. Well, it's 45 minutes. It's not 30 that it used to be, so it is much better. All right. And, they didn't even have source material before, so they shouldn't complain now anymore. But I understand it is a lot of pressure. It is stressful to write something, this long, this big in such a demanding examination. Try to focus on development and not the length. If you focus on expressing your ideas and the development, I assure you, you will manage to write this effectively within the time limit of 45 minutes. Okay. Practice does make perfect. Students will adjust. They won't be able to write the essay within 45 minutes the first time or the second time. The quality won't be the best. It will take them a few times to adapt to this. One approach is to focus on 40 minutes as the final goal, so you can have like 3, 4, 5 minutes, left in order to do some proofreading. Okay. And when we're talking about proofreading, go through the writing again. I keep telling this to my kids. Okay, focus on grammar and syntax. You can correct so many grammar and syntax mistakes if you read it just once. And try to substitute poor vocabulary with more advanced terms. If you think that one word is really, kind of weak, use another one. Okay, you can actually make so many corrections if you read it once. Okay, at the end after finishing it. And try to rectify the repetitive vocabulary. I mean, there are so many students that use the same words over and over. And I'm not talking about a specific word. You can say also, or however, and try to substitute the words that you find that are repeating within the writing task with something else. Go through it once more, okay, to make sure it makes sense, like the misuse of vocabulary. Some words don't match everything. Language structures, okay. Now, as for cohesion, I am sorry to say this, but it would be better and advisable to practice a lot of essays before the day of the exam, because if you are trying to rectify cohesion in an essay that you have just written, it's impossible to change it, okay, within the last minutes of the whole writing task assignment. Okay, so I would like to thank you all for joining us today. And if you have any questions, you can find us, on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. You can visit the website, katherinereilly.blog. And of course, you can email us at katherinereilly1@yahoo.com. And you can check our other videos on this channel. Don't forget to subscribe, and I hope I see you again soon. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye, everyone.